Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way. Hello, hello, hello. This is the next episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast. And we're so excited to have you here. I'm Claire.
I'm James.
And today we are talking about something that is a little controversial perhaps and might be a bit uncomfortable for a few of us. We're talking today about
the midlife crisis, the dreaded midlife crisis. But
dreaded for some.
Don't dread it. What we're going to do is attempt to reposition it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, we're just going to talk about why we think it's really, really important to discuss this on this episode today. We could have shied away from it because obviously it is a bit of a controversial topic for some.
Thorny subject.
Yeah, but we thought, no, that's not James and I. We don't do that. We tackle it head on, so that's what we're going to do.
And as I sit here in my pink Speedos with my pina colada.
And his Ferrari outside. I wish. So basically the reason we wanted to do this is because we feel that in today's society, there is a lot of disconnection. People are feeling quite isolated, quite frankly. I think the more connected we become digitally, the more disconnected a lot of us feel. And we don't always want to be vulnerable and share how we're feeling. So a lot of us end up feeling quite alone in our thoughts and feelings. And we don't want that. We want to create, our mission is always to create a sense of community and people feeling accepted and understood. So that's why we're doing this one today.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna talk through exactly what we're doing and obviously give you tips. But I think one of the things we're trying to achieve with this is just sharing it. If we're open about it and we share it with compassion, it's going to make it easier for everyone. And I think there's much more of a focus on mental health these days. I think we're getting there with the midlife crisis. It has been a figure of fun at times, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But it's an important thing to recognise and share it with compassion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So how this episode is going to roll, because again, another key thing that James and I always love to do is make sure that you go away with practical tips on how to shift things physically and mentally for you. But basically what we're going to do, we're going to talk about where it even came from. So where did this term even start? Then we are going to talk about some feelings around it, why we don't talk about it, but also talk about what some of the signs are that you might be experiencing and feeling that you're alone with, but you're not, because we're going to discuss them. Actually, how it's different for men and women. It is very different for men and women. But again, we're all in this together, so we'll talk about that. Then we'll look at why. Like, why are we feeling this way? And
this is interesting because there's a whole load of stuff going on.
Yeah, that you won't necessarily know about. So that's our job, to let you know, again, to make you feel really understood and coming at this with compassion, but also even from a physiological perspective, there's a lot going on for us. And then what we can do, the practical stuff, like what we can do at the end to start turning it around for us.
Yeah, so prior warning, at times it might start to sound depressing, but it's not designed to be. We'll keep it light, but hold on into the end because there we've got all the tips and the good stuff. Absolutely,
and obviously James and I always bantering, always going to try and make it fun at points. So James is going to dive. When we started looking into the midlife crisis a little bit more, we found some interesting stats and figures and stuff, and James has actually found out where the term even came from.
Yeah, so it came actually out of psychoanalysis. Probably not a massive surprise there. There's a massive psychological factors at work for the midlife crisis. But it was a psychoanalyst called Elliot Jacks in 1957, addressing a conference in London, and he coined the term midlife crisis, and he looked at symptoms could include religious awakenings, promiscuity, sudden inability to enjoy life, hypochondriacal concern over health and appearance, and compulsive attempts to remain young. Which I think probably sums up the range of things that can happen with midlife crisis. What's really interesting is, this was 1957, that he described a 36-year-old patient. This is like his case notes that he presented in this talk. 36. People didn't live as long, even
No,
in,
that's
even
true.
in their
No, that's
50s.
true. Yeah.
And this was the quote. Up till now, life has seemed an endless upward slope, with nothing but the distant horizon in view. Now suddenly, I seem to have reached the crest of the hill, and there, stretching ahead, is the downward slope with the end of the road in sight. Far enough away, it's true, but there is death, observably present at the end.
I'm laughing.
We're laughing. It's a slightly morbid viewpoint. But,
I'm going to reach for the bottle in a minute.
Yeah. Well, that would be a big mistake.
No,
in essence, that's what happened. Like, we're reaching that point in life where we're probably at the top of the tree in whatever we decided to, whether that's raising a family, job, career, and it has all been upward, but now you are at the top of the hill and can see the end of the road, and we shouldn't shy away from that. I think problems all come when we shy away from that fact. Interesting side note, the phrase didn't really come into popular use until Jacques actually wrote a paper in 1965, and then after that it became widely adopted first in psychoanalysis and onwards. But he later admitted that quote, the 36-year-old patient, was in fact himself.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Oh, he's kept that away from me. So, yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing. With a midlife crisis, people just take the mickey out of it, don't they? Like, it's the guy. We've seen so many, sketches and things of the guy, the middle-aged man with his middle-aged spread, buying his sports car, trying to pick up young girls, dating his secretary and all that kind of stuff. This is just what James does, except I'm his secretary, so he's really stumped there.
That's good. I get to date my secretary.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of joking around it, but here's the truth of it all. When we speak to clients, both James and myself, what James just said about being at the top of your tree, you've strived for these goals, right? These are the things that you set yourself targets to achieve by, quite often midlife. And you've reached them. You might have the children, the house, the job, the blah, blah, blah. And where most people come a cropper here is they look at their life and they don't know whether that is what they want anymore, or whether they're happy with what they've achieved thus far. And that can be really, really demoralising. It can really stir up a lot of emotion for people.
And it's important to note that's just not general success. Successful people you look at and think are successful, can have this happen to them too, because there are different areas of life in which we need to achieve. Career is only one. There's like emotional, spiritual, and what happens a lot of the time is we focus on one or two areas and we might have achieved in those, but then it really comes slamming home that we've neglected another area, and that's where the problems can start to begin.
Yeah, and it's really, really important to say that your goals change, people. Everyone out there, your goals change, and it's okay that they change throughout your life, right? But particularly at this point, you have experienced so many things, the highs and the lows. Of course it's going to change who you are. Of course it's going to change your self-image and what you are wanting to go for the remainder of your life. And that's okay. Expecting the goals to be exactly the same that you had even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, is actually really unrealistic. And here's the thing that we see a lot, and this is why we're talking about this, is because we want to let everyone know that this is okay and that you are understood. A lot of people don't want to say any of this to their friends, their family, their loved ones, anyone, because they feel such a sense of guilt, right? You've got everything you wanted, or thereabouts. You've got so much of what you wanted, and yet you are now questioning everything. And there is such a sense of guilt around that, and it makes people incredibly isolated and alone.
True. I'm actually throwing a true anecdote here from a client that I worked with. He was having real doubts about what he was doing, really successful in his career. And he'd been with this company, worked his way up. He strived to get up the ladder, had done it. He said, it came home to me. I was in a meeting with my boss and my boss's boss. And my boss's boss was like, hey, in 5 years' time, you're going to have his job. And I just got, rather than thinking, yay, I just got cold dread. I thought, that is not what I want at all.
Yeah.
And he went on just to completely change his life and far, far happier now. But sometimes it's just those moments.
Yeah, those pivotal
strike.
moments, and we're all getting them. Some at different stages, but we're all getting them.
I was going to add something, Claire, although we've coined there where the phrase came from in 57 and 65. Of course, it was recognised a lot earlier than that.
Yes. This is where James is going to get geeky, but I love his geekiness.
No, it's not geeky, but Dante's Divine Comedy, the protagonist, who most scholars would say was in his mid-30s, again, is at the beginning of the book, gives a speech which is about his life being halfway through, and the pathway is no longer clear. So even back then, it was being recognised. Although in those days, 14th century, you were pretty much near the end of your life by the time you're in your mid-30s. So, hey, that's another thing to be thankful for. We get to live a lot longer and in a lot better state.
Yeah, and that's really true. The path is not necessarily clear. I think when you're younger, you're being told, we're going to go into this in a minute, but you're being told like what the way forward is, and it is super, super clear. But when you got there, you're like, okay, now it's not so clear. What now? What we're going to do is talk about, we've kind of talked about, look, we're all feeling it, it's a really, really common thing, but actually some of the signs that you might be experiencing, again, we're going to touch on some of these so you don't feel so isolated in your feelings and what's going on. They are different for men and women. I don't know, with James, do you want to talk about, from a perspective of men, really, what the main drivers of this midlife crisis is?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's similarities for both sexes.
Absolutely.
The main one is just kind of like, is this it?
Questioning
That's
beliefs.
kind of the big question, questioning beliefs. But looking at the research, for men, it tends to be more around success and where they are now compared to what their beliefs were when they were younger about what they would become. This is where we get into like psychological theory, but I'm going to save that for later. But yeah, there's this disconnect basically between your long-held beliefs about what you would achieve and where you actually are. And like I said, you might decide, I want to be an astronaut, and you can be an astronaut, but maybe in becoming an astronaut, you've totally neglected something else in your life, like your relationships are a mess or something. So you could be successful at the thing you thought you could be successful at. Those beliefs could totally match up, but there'll be other ones that don't, and this is where the problems come in.
Absolutely, and I know we joke about the men and the younger women and the cars and stuff, but for women, a lot of it is around the fact that our body is not responding in the same way to the stuff that we used to do, like exercise-wise, food-wise. There's a lot around how we look, especially at midlife, and feeling pretty desperate about the fact that we're, the term losing our looks for women is a harsh reality. Also, and the relationships. So we actually do start, if we've, been in relationships, we're married, we actually start looking at our relationships with our partner, and also with our children and our family. So women apparently look more at their relationships, more at their kind of body image and all that kind of stuff. A really, really interesting fact that I came across about relationships and divorce, actually. This was a study that came out in 2016 that even though in the UK divorce rates have fallen to their lowest level for 40 years, I didn't know that actually, I was quite surprised by that. The number of couples over 50 who are separating has reached an all-time high. In England and Wales, it was a rise of 11% in 1 decade. So it goes to show, actually, that once you get to that stage, there are lots and lots of people questioning their most kind of basic elements of their life, their relationship, and that was quite a surprise to me. So again...
Wasn't there that research that recently came out like last week or the week before? They basically found that on a happiness measure, women were better off not being married,
That's
but
right.
men should be married.
That's right. And actually, it was about marriage and children and everything, but women are happier, apparently, this study, I can't remember who it was with, but are happier if they're not married. I think men by that certain age, because actually what I haven't said here is that was also, the majority of that is driven by females, so instigating the divorce. So it's quite telling what we're going through, so it's a statistic that's telling about what we're experiencing.
Definitely.
Without further ado, what we're going to do is talk about some of the reasons. So we like to give context about why we're feeling this, because when we understand why, we have awareness and then we have a power to change it. When we're just blaming ourselves and thinking we're alone, we don't have that compassion with ourselves in order to empower us to change.
And here, we're going to do a reframe for you now. So we like to see midlife as a second adolescence. And we're going to deep dive into why. But basically, in a nutshell, remember when you're a teenager, there's a whole load of things going on in your body. You're struggling to find your identity. You're trying on different masks. There's a whole load of hormonal stuff going on. You know, you think it's a great idea to go to a party, down a bottle of Thunderbird in 30 seconds, be the centre of attention, often backfires. Similar to what happens in midlife. You're finding your new role and, you know...
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
when James
reframe.
said this to me, I was like, I loved this reframe. And he came up with this. It's quite clever. But I loved this reframe and I thought, that is it.
Yeah. So we're going to deep dive in, but in a nutshell, it's not your fault. There's a load of psychological stuff going on, a load of physical stuff, a load of hormonal stuff, just like when you're a teenager.
Yeah, totally.
Which may cause you to act inappropriately at times.
Yeah.
Like a Thunderbird. Never did that.
I really, really hope you're not doing that, by the way, people. Going and getting smashed on Thunderbird. If you are, reach out for help. No, I'm joking. So, just from a female perspective, we're going to talk about some physiological changes that are going on in your body that are resulting in some of the signs and symptoms that you might be feeling. So, physiologically, us women, we have a reduction in estrogen and progesterone when we start moving into midlife. The one I really want to focus on, so when we start reducing our estrogen, we actually it's more difficult for us to lose body fat, okay? So that's one thing. When our progesterone starts to lower, our sleep becomes disturbed, and actually we find it a lot harder to have restful sleep. What's happening here is that's obviously lowering your energy. You're feeling tired all the time. That obviously leads to feelings of anxiety and depression. We know that a lack of sleep can really, really lead to a bit of a doom and gloom kind of outlook. So that's what's happening there. But also, when you have a lack of sleep, it raises your hormone cortisol, which is your stress hormone. Again, that is having an impact on how effective your body is at getting rid of body fat, basically. So if your cortisol is high, you actually hang on to more fat, especially around the midsection. One other piece of information, this is all to make you realise that it's not it's not your fault. There is lots of stuff going on inside you for all women. The other thing is when you have a lack of sleep, there's been research that it lowers the hormone leptin, which signals that you are full. So there's, again, lots of research around the fact that because that isn't being triggered, that hormone leptin, you're more likely to snack throughout the day, compounding the whole issue around body fat and body image. So that's some of the hormonal stuff physiologically that's going on inside you. There's a whole heap more, but I feel like I've talked enough, and James obviously needs to talk about dudes.
Well, I'm going to talk about the dudes.
Let's
but
go
first,
for the dudes.
I'd also chime in for both sexes, the cortisol thing. Another layer of that could just be general stress in your life. You know, we're not called Generation Squeeze for nothing.
Generation X, you know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, you want to be at the top of your game career-wise with loads of responsibilities. You could be raising a family, you've got family responsibilities, you've got ageing parents, kids. There's a whole lot going on which is going to stress you out anyway. So your cortisol levels are going to be up there, again, which, like as Claire said, is causing you to hold on to fat, disrupt your sleep, all the rest of it.
And actually affect how you feel when you look in the mirror. So it's a double whammy, really. But for guys, obviously, there is lots of physiological stuff going on as well.
For dudes, the main one, you know, from about the age of 35, everyone's different. Obviously, our testosterone levels start to naturally decline. What that means is that basically every year we're losing muscle mass, and that's compounding year on year on year. Along with losing muscle mass, unsurprisingly, you're losing strength because you have less muscle, and your metabolic rate is slowing because muscle is highly metabolic. So effectively your metabolism is slowing right down. You know, if you've ever visited like an elderly relative and they just eat nothing because they don't need the calories for their muscles anymore. There's not a lot left, and the metabolism's super slow. That's the downside. The good news is you can totally offset it, and we're going to cover how you can offset it and overcome it.
We're going to give you some hints and tips right at the end.
But the big thing in the US right now for guys in their 40s and up is TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. I'm sure it's going to hit over here. Listen, each their own. It does work, but it's a lifetime choice. Once you go on it, you can't really come off it. And I'd say there's other things to look at to raise your testosterone naturally that we're going to cover off here.
Absolutely.
So it's not all doom and gloom. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Also, while you're feeling it, women, society puts a load of pressure on us. You know, it's a youth culture, right? So we are bombarded constantly with images. Guys are too, right? Actually,
more so now. Actually, yeah.
Totally. Where there's a rise in, anorexia amongst men,
body dysmorphia,
but
steroid abuse.
Totally. And I think so for women. You know, losing our looks or our body not responding in the way that it used to, you're kind of going against what society, the pressure that it's putting on you to look like this. There's a lot more pressure for you to try and maintain your looks, whether that's through plastic surgery and things like that. But we are bombarded with all these images of youthful-looking women. Although we
wait,
had...
I'm going to say, but this also goes way back, before we go into like the positive stuff, like, the Trojan War was fought over the beauty of Helen, who was young. Snow White, the fairy tale, why that whole disaster happened. The Queen looked in the mirror one day and she wasn't the fairest of them all anymore. She got old. So it's like, it's a well-known, so deeply ingrained for centuries and centuries.
Yeah, and for women, it's like you've got to be the good mother, you've got to be the good wife, you've also got to look amazing, you've basically got to be everything. And when it's just hard to keep all those balls juggling in the air, you know, of course we're going to feel really, really low and depressed. Although I would say something, why does he laugh at balls juggling in the air? What's funny about that?
I think funny.
Goodness. I don't have a midlife man here. I have a 6-year-old boy.
Second adolescence.
There we are, really. But there is Sharon Stone on the
Sharon. Yes, I was going to say
the flip side of this. There's a resurgence of the old 90s supermodels.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen this. Like, it's amazing. More elderly, powerful, amazing women coming back. The original 90s supermodels are now being used for shoots and catwalks. All the old, what was it, Helena Christensen?
Eva Evangelista. Linda Evangelista, that's
Cindy
right.
Crawford. They're all back, which I think is amazing.
And Sharon Stone, how old is she now?
Sharon Stone on the cover of Vogue, 61, looking amazing again.
Listen,
fantastic.
I know we're all these women out there are going to go, yeah, but, you know, they've got personal trainers and they've got people doing their food and they've got both. Yes, okay, that's fine. But
and a genetic advantage, but they're very...
Yes, but what we're saying is it is an I think totally for women, this is the most powerful time. We've got so much power at this age, so much wisdom, so much knowledge, and that beauty is honestly what shines through. And I always say it's about being strong on the inside out. It's not about what you look like, but when you feel strong on the inside, and we're going to give you some tips and stuff like that about exercising and moving. Once you feel very in your body and in control, that's the sexiest thing ever, I think. So... society's expectations on women, but also on men.
Yeah, on men. So by the time you hit your midlife, you expect to be like, you know, powerful, on top of your game, have provided for your family, you know, everything's sorted. And I think times have changed. It's harder and harder to be in that position at midlife now. But the pressure's still there, you know, and it's reinforced by, you know, archetypes on film and TV shows, like the successful dude that all the women like. Yeah. And all that kind of stuff.
I mean, psychologically for women as well, you might have like the empty nesters. You've got, by this point in our lives, a lot has happened. There might have been some loss. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that have made you reevaluate your belief systems and your confidence and everything like that. So psychologically, the pressures on just life having happened is also one of the reasons that you are perhaps feeling like you are in a midlife crisis.
And we can explain that. Psychological factors, there's a psychological theory called cognitive dissonance. It basically, in layman's terms, means that your beliefs and reality are out of whack. So your belief might be, I should be an England football player, but reality is you can't even make the Sunday pub team. You know, it's causing dissonance for you. And this is what midlife crisis really is. It's the coming home of lots of things, long-held beliefs and evaluation of where you are, and there's some form of out of whack there.
Yeah, so true.
The other thing that a lot of research suggests is, like, you know, if you have an external locus of control rather than internal, which means you look to external factors to validate yourself, you're more likely to fall prey to this because you focused on achieving things outside of you rather than doing the internal work.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit about this now, I think.
So, right, we're kind of at the end of talking about what it is, why you might be feeling that way, all that kind of stuff. So now we're going to up the ante and give you, as in true Claire and James style,
the good news.
We're going to explain to you some small little steps that you can start doing right from where you are to start shifting any feelings of being in a midlife crisis.
And embrace this second adolescence.
Yes, so we are going to start, obviously, with exercise. So we don't mean smashing yourself to pieces in the gym. We don't mean doing crazy HIIT workouts, although we do love that. But you don't need to do any. If you're doing nothing at the moment, just start moving your body. Please, please, please. The reason you should do this, particularly at this stage, is because it will help your sleep. Okay, there's loads of research around that exercise helps us sleep better. There is also, of course, the physical appearance side. Once you start moving your body will, your metabolic rate will start raising, you'll actually just feel more energized, you will look different, and also it is, of course, going to help with a lot of anxiety and depression. I've seen this so much in the clients that I've worked with. It releases feel-good hormones, feel-good endorphins, and the depression will slowly start to
natural
dissipate.
Mood enhancer.
Totally. So that's on the exercise front. Just start moving yourself.
Yeah, on the diet side, just stop eating rubbish. Rubbish in, rubbish out. If you eat rubbish, you're going to feel like rubbish. And that's not just like the physical effects of obviously eating too much of the wrong kind of thing and putting on the kind of weight that you don't want. There's a lot of research out there now that shows that the majority of our neurotransmitters, our feel-good hormones and chemicals, are produced in the gut off the back of our digestive processes and what we're eating.
Absolutely.
So if we're putting absolute rubbish in there, we can't expect like good neurotransmitters and feel good chemicals coming off the back of it. So clean up your diet, eat healthy.
Yeah, reduce the sugar, look at the sugar content. Also, reevaluate your goals. So I know we've touched on this before, so this is the third one. Reevaluate what is important to you and don't be scared to do this, okay? Putting sticking plasters all over the place, all over what you're feeling, will only put your problems in the post, and then they're going to come landing on your doorstep all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to look at where you're at. Otherwise, you are just going to be, doing sticky plasters for the rest of your life. It can be alcohol, it can be anything. So don't be scared to look at it and look at what is important to you, not society, not anyone else, but you. At the end of the day, as morbid as this sounds, I'm so sorry, it is you are going to end up with. It is you that evaluates the fulfillment and the worth of your life, okay? It's important to start looking at it now instead of ignoring it. So please start looking at what's important to you.
Yeah, I'll just add into that, this is a funny one, like sometimes we've got long-held goals. When we look at them, we don't actually want them anymore, but we're scared to let go of them because we've invested in them so much. Hey, listen, it is not failure to ditch a goal that actually you no longer want and no longer serves you. Failure would be continuing to make yourself miserable pursuing that. So yeah,
it's
check in,
brave.
reevaluate.
It's really, really brave, and be vulnerable. Just be vulnerable with yourself and compassionate with yourself. The next one.
Yeah, reconnect with nature. So we are massive fans of getting outside, training in nature as much as we can. We believe it helps, and there's more studies that show it is. And in fact, Mind just did a study, the mental health charity, and 95% of the people they interviewed said that their mood was improved by being outdoors, spending time outdoors, and they had less anxiety as a result. So, try and get outside. A lot of us live these lives where we get up, we shuttle from home to office and back to home, and don't really get out much. So try and get out more.
Yeah, you're kind of living in a box, in an air-conditioned box, most of us, in an office. And the other one is take a break from the routine. So kind of following on from being out in nature, take a break from the routine. But I don't just mean for like an hour or so. You can't see the wood from the trees if you do not step outside your life, even for like a day or two. And now listen, I know not everyone can get some time on their own for long periods of time, but it's really, really important. Stop filling your time with mindless stuff like Netflix, blah, 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 and actually spend some time out of your routine, go somewhere different, and really, really connect with yourself. Again, very scary for some people, especially when they've been on the treadmill, surrounded by people a majority of their life. But it's necessary, take a break from the routine.
Talk to someone. This is a really, really important one. A lot of us bottle these things up and we feel we are alone with it. Do you know how common these feelings are? We all have these feelings at some point in our lives.
And I hope this is what this is doing,
Yeah.
is realising it's common.
So, you know, it could be a counsellor, it could be therapy, it could just be a friend you trust and going for a coffee or sitting over a pint or a glass of wine, just talking to them about how you feel. And don't be scared of that. Being vulnerable is really courageous, and they will be honoured that you've chosen to open up like that. And I think you'll be surprised how many people like have similar kind of feelings, and how an outside perspective of your situation might help reframe it for you.
Yeah, and speaking of reframing, let's reframe this moment in time for us as an opportunity. It is an opportunity. This is not something, it's not a downward spiral. This is only a downward spiral if you believe it to be so. So reframing this as an opportunity to use the wisdom of your age, to use the wisdom of your experiences, to understand yourself better, to be able to be a better person for yourself and everyone around you by actually looking at who you now want to become. This is an exciting time if you let it be. And one of the main ways James and I always do this is to look at what we do have rather than what we don't have. So look at what you have achieved, look at what you have done, and think, okay, that's amazing, look at all that. That's what I've done, but now I've got loads more stuff to do. Like, as human beings, we are designed to expand, to grow, to become the best versions of ourselves. So don't step back from that. Move into it, lean into that exciting time, and be in gratitude. Be in gratitude for what you have rather than what you don't. You know, so your looks might be going a little bit, so you might have had this happen to you, but look at the opportunities unfolding in front of you. Look at the positives that come with being your age.
Exactly. Embrace it. We might be looking at the top of the hill, but you know, that is still a beautiful journey ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We can create more mountains, more hills to climb, just in a different way. So we really, really hope that, you know, this podcast today has helped you feel connected. It helps you feel like you're not alone. We're not saying everyone out there that's listening to this is going through this. You might not be. You might recognise some elements of this. And if we've just touched a few people out there in some way, we feel like we've done our job well. So, without further ado, we will leave you and say thank you so much for listening. All of your support, it means the world to us.
Thank you, and see you next time.
See you next time. We're sending you so much love. Send in your thoughts and any questions you have, we'd happily answer. Lots of love.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you, so drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah.